Ever visited a porn cinema? Share your experience. Recently, I mustered the courage to visit an old-fashioned adult cinema in Montreal that I had been fascinated by for years. One spring evening, I finally took the plunge. Upon arrival, I encountered a friendly young woman at the counter. She smiled and asked if it was my first time there, to which I replied affirmatively. After handing her the admission fee, she wished me a good time. Stepping through heavy velvet curtains, I found myself on the main floor of the century-old theater. The screen displayed moderately good adult films, and I took a moment to settle in and observe the surroundings. The room housed around 25 people, with some wandering around, others discreetly indulging themselves, and a few gathering in the shadows near the front to catch glimpses of the VIP rooms on the second floor. These private rooms allowed couples to engage in activities while remaining secluded, although I had heard rumors of ways one could spy on neighboring rooms. Immersed in the atmosphere, I couldn't resist the temptation and decided to join in the fun by pleasuring myself. Surprisingly, few people paid attention, with a couple of individuals briefly watching before moving on. Equipped with a small bottle of lube, I comfortably enjoyed the experience. Later, I embarked on a brief exploration of the second floor, where shadows and muffled sounds intrigued me. While it was difficult to make out explicit details, I found pleasure in the various suggestive noises. As I ventured into the darker corners, I stumbled upon an older man providing a handjob to another gentleman seated beside him. Despite one person covering their face, our eyes met, and it seemed he was content with the arrangement. The encounter felt both desperate and strangely delightful. A woman arrived and unabashedly freed her breasts from her bra. In an instant, a group of men gathered around her, delighting in their own pleasure. She assisted some with handjobs, then selected two younger men and handed them condoms before satisfying them orally. One gentleman climaxed rapidly, while the other struggled but persevered until he, too, reached his climax, ultimately spilling his seed upon her chest. It was messy yet undeniably arousing. At that moment, a couple arrived on the main floor, and the man generously offered his female partner to other patrons. I observed her perform oral intimacy on approximately 10 men and engage in intercourse with a few others. After a brief break for cleaning up, she returned for another round, indulging in the thrill of the experience. The scene felt raw and unfiltered. Further exploration led me to a section where some black women appeared to tease and engage with the men nearby. I witnessed one woman on her knees, providing a handjob to a patron while other men gathered and masturbated before them. A couple of individuals released their seed, their aim and location inconsequential. This raw and explicit exhibitionism captivated me. To my surprise, the woman motioned for me to join her. Eagerly, I obliged. She bent over, and I followed her lead, dry humping her for a few minutes. She then turned around, undid my pants, and began stimulating me manually. Her touch encompassed my balls and ventured to explore my anus. In a trance, I marveled at the intense pleasure derived from this public display. With her focus shifting to my balls and ass, I was encouraged to finish the task myself. Succumbing to the urge, I reached orgasm, releasing a creamy load that adorned my hand, her hands, and eventually dripped onto the floor. Another man nearby also experienced his own climax. As the woman tightly gripped my penis, she gently squeezed out the last drops upon the floor. It was a rendezvous steeped in dirtiness and intensity. Afterward, I gathered myself and returned to the main seating area, my head spinning with the array of experiences. I remained for another hour, simply taking in the atmosphere before noticing activity in a back row on the main level. Curiosity piqued, I decided to investigate. I discovered a charming femboy who had spread a blanket over a couple of seats, comfortably stretching his legs to dangle over the neighboring seats. Older men swiftly gathered around him as he proceeded to pleasure them orally, one after another. Moved by the scene, I joined in by pleasuring myself while watching him earnestly fulfill their desires. The touch of his smooth, soft legs enticed me, and I eventually ventured upward to caress his balls and semi-erect shaft. The experience was beautiful and awe-inspiring. Overwhelmed with desire, I yearned to kneel before him, but the constrained seating arrangement made it impractical. Nevertheless, the welcome indulgence led me to climax while admiring his feet, my load gracefully coating his toes before cascading onto the seat and floor. After servicing the men around him, the femboy positioned himself on the slightly unclean floor. Engaged in his own self-pleasure, he emitted melodious moans as he reached climax, leaving a small puddle as evidence of his intense experience. He tidied up, ensuring he appeared presentable, before departing. It was an incredibly steamy encounter, and I hope to encounter him again, ideally as a regular visitor. If there's one thing I've learned, it is that the theater, like life itself, embodies both beauty and dirtiness. It represents a blend of bravery and fear, ecstasy and shame, control and abandon, intimacy and distance. I am grateful that the cinema is tolerated and provides visitors with a safe and comfortable space to express their intimate desires as they choose. As far as I could tell, no one was harmed, and I don't believe any laws were broken. Life is good. However, I also acknowledge the complexity of human experiences and their potential downstream consequences. While intimate needs and anonymous consensual intimacy can be nourishing, albeit briefly, it is vital that everyone has the opportunity to partake in such moments that make life dance and the world spin.